What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my man cave. So for this video today, I'm going to be making for you a creamy seafood stuffed shell. Now this recipe is super easy. It is absolutely delicious. It's one of my favorites to make. So in the description, I will link all the products that you will need in order to complete this recipe. So if you'd like to follow along, which I hope you do, and make this yourself. If you do, please leave a comment and let me know how it turned out for you and how much you enjoyed it. But here we go, and please join me in my kitchen. One of the first steps you want to do is get a large pot, fill it with 3/4 of the way with water, and add salt to that water. And then you are going to bring this all to a boil so you can get your noodles ready. Now that you will have your water on, first thing you want to do is come over here and you want to mince as fine as you can a large clove of garlic. And then you want to finely chop some green pepper. You want 1 tablespoon, which I usually count to about 1/4. So if you get a green pepper with a 4-bottom butt, as I like to call it, just take 1/4 of that, and that gives you your tablespoon of green pepper. And you need 1 tablespoon of onion. I like to keep mine a little bit chunkier. It says to finely chop it, but I like to leave the onion a little bit bigger. It gives it a little bit more texture in the final product. And the next thing you want to do is get out the remaining measuring bowls. This will save you so much time if you just pull out the measuring bowls that you need for everything. I like to pull out a couple extra than what I need, some small, some large. That way you have everything here so that you can measure everything out. So here is a little Benny seasoning, as I'm going to call this, that is in place of the seafood seasoning. Now when you make this recipe, you can just use Old Bay. The recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of Old Bay in the recipe, so you can measure that out. What I like to do is cut the Old Bay in half. Now about 1/4. We'll go to about 1/2 there. Add the Old Bay. Then we take coarse medium black pepper. So we have our medium black pepper. We're going to take about 1/4 of a tablespoon, about 1/2 teaspoon of our medium black pepper. We're going to add that to this dish here. And we're also going to add 1.5 tablespoons of citrus champagne vinegar. The champagne vinegar, you don't actually have to use this. If you want, you can actually get away with mixing 1 part lemon juice to 1 part of just a regular clear vinegar, and you want 1.5 tablespoons. So 3/4 of a tablespoon of vinegar, 3/4 of a tablespoon of lemon juice. And we're going to add that to our black pepper here. So when our recipe calls for the seafood seasoning, we're actually going to add both of these together. Do not mix the Old Bay with the liquid pepper, because then this just turns into a cake and it doesn't come out of the tray real easy. Here are all of your ingredients in order that they are listed. We have our 24 jumbo shells. Pick any brand that you prefer. I didn't list which brand because I use different ones every time. It kind of just depends on which one's on sale. Why not, right? Then you need 1 tablespoon of your finely chopped pepper, like I showed you. You'll need 1 tablespoon, oh, there's that phantom finger again, of the finely chopped red onion. Then you need 1 tablespoon of butter and also 1/4 cup of butter. Then you also need your large garlic clove chopped. Then next in line, you need your frozen shrimp and your 2 cans of 6-ounce lump crab drained. So make sure you drain these really well, because adding too much moisture to it will, cause an issue. Then you need your 1/4 cup of mozzarella cheese. You also then need your, 2 tablespoons of milk. I like to let it get to room temperature. Again, it's just easier to mix once you start adding everything together. Then after that, you also need your seafood seasoning, which I just showed you how to mix together. So this is everything that you are going to need for the first part of this recipe. Now we still got to do the sauce. I'm going to add that separately. But first, we are going to take our noodles now that our water is boiling here. Take our noodles, just add them into the water. Grab a wooden spoon here and just gently push them down so that they're all submerged. And while these are setting here, we're going to move on to the next step. Our next step is grabbing our skillet. We are going to turn this on to medium heat. In our skillet, we are going to take our 1 tablespoon of butter. Add this in. We are also going to take our garlic. Add this in. Be easier with 2 hands, but that's how it works right now. We're also going to take our green peppers. Add that. And lastly, we are going to add our red onion. So now we are going to take our spoon, get this butter while our noodles are going, and start melting this butter. And we want to get this so that the onions just become translucent, and we get this just a nice translucent, oh geez, try saying that word 3 times fast while talking into a video. So we're going to let this cook for a minute, and we will be, now we have a nice little crisp to our onions and pepper mixture with the garlic. We're just going to take this off the heat, set it in the back here, and let this cool down. Also, at this point, our noodles are done. Word to the wise when doing stuffed shells, keep your noodles a little al dente because you're going to have them in sauce. So they're going to cook the rest of the way in the oven, and you don't want them falling apart once everything's done. So what we're going to do is strain our pasta while this cools down, and then we will move on to the next step. I'll take this and just pour those in there. A little bit of steam. Take our pot, put it back there just to store it. Another thing that's easy to do at this point is take your veggie mixture off of the heat. Otherwise, have a bowl near the stove. So once your onion and pepper mixture is done cooking, you want to get just a little crisp to the edge of the onions. You want to make them soft so that they blend in, but you want to have that little bit of a crisp to it so all the flavors incorporate into each other. But take it off of the heat immediately so that it'll have time to cool down. And we're going to move on. We are going to need a large saucepan again. We are going to need 4 cups of milk, quarter cup of butter, and a 1/4 cup of flour. What we are going to do is put our 1/4 cup of butter into the bottom of the pan. Turn this on to medium heat, and maybe medium low. And while we are, there's that phantom finger again. While we are waiting for that, we're going to grab our whisk. And now our butter has melted all the way. It is slowly starting to simmer at the bottom. We're going to take our 1/4 cup of flour, mix this with the butter, and mix this well until we get a nice paste out of it. Make sure the butter and all the flour is well incorporated. Then we are going to add our milk. Now I know people will yell and say, you're supposed to add that slowly and mix it into there, and yeah, I understand that, but I have also found that one way or another, it doesn't seem to make too much of a difference. So I usually add it all in here because this will give me time to get to my next step. So you're going to do that, and then you want to incorporate, make sure that you get all the lumps and make sure all the butter and flour has incorporated into the milk. But the milk is still cold, so this is going to take a little while to set up. So we're going to let this simmer on medium. No, we're not going to let it simmer. We need to stir this constantly. Sorry, let me rebuke that. We need to watch this constantly so it doesn't burn to the bottom, but in the meantime we're going to move on to another step so that we can, keep moving with the process. Alright, so the next steps for your roux, we have this on the stove here. Like I said, you want to keep an eye on it. You do not want to let this sit for too long or your roux will burn and you will be very disappointed because you will have to start over. It just is not going to taste the same if you let it burn, and it's gross. I've done it before. Lesson learned. So once you have your roux going, what you need is a half a cup of Parmesan. Now, I like to do a 50-50 mix of Parmesan, you can see that there, and Asiago cheese. This way, it adds just a little bit more flavor and it tastes really good with this recipe. Other variations that I have done, I have made this utilizing blue cheese. That also tastes good. But my favorite so far is the Asiago and Parmesan mix. The blue cheese mixture I actually added into the shells themselves. It was fantastic. Just not something I would make every day for, every occasion. So what we're going to do, give this a quick stir. So we're going to grate our cheese, the Parmesan and the Asiago. We need 3/4 of a cup of each. I like to grate it into a bowl first. It just makes it easier for each one. Measuring it out so that we get a full 3/4 of a cup. This is the Parmesan. And then we will move on to our Asiago, but before that, always check your roux. Make sure to give it a good stir. Make sure that nothing's sticking to the bottom of this. If it is, then you got to start over. But you want to keep an eye on this every time you take a pause from doing anything. Come over and give this a quick stir, because once it starts to steam is when you really want to pay attention to it. So we are going to take our Asiago cheese here. We're going to grate 3/4 of a cup of this. Like I said, it generally ends up being about a half of a block of a square block like this. And then you get big chunks like that. Yeah, you have to eat them. So now we have our Asiago. Put it into our measuring cup. And our cheeses are ready for our sauce. One thing we're going to do now is we have our roux starting to set up. What you want to do is take just a dash of your medium black pepper, and you want to put about 1/4 tablespoon in there and mix this in with the roux. And keep an eye on this and keep stirring it until it's ready. We've been keeping an eye on our sauce here, and I apologize. I'm pretty sure throughout this whole part I've been referring to this as a roux. Once you add a milk, it turns into the sauce. The roux is just the flour and butter mixture that you have at the beginning before you add the milk. And that's what creates your nice creamy sauce. And as you can see, it's been probably about 10 minutes. And we've just been sitting here constantly whisking away at this, getting it to come up to temperature to a slow simmer, because then it'll thicken up enough to where we are going to add our cheese into here. And then we will assemble our stuffed shells. Alright, so now our sauce has started to come to a simmer. Once it starts to simmer, so once you start to see it bubble in there, that's when you start your timer. From 2 minutes from the time it starts doing that, still continue to stir it and let it bubble. Or, I keep saying bubble, jeez. Let it simmer. Once it's simmered for 2 minutes, like this one has already, what you're going to do is actually turn the heat off. Take your Parmesan and Asiago cheese. Add that in. And give this a good mix. And it's hot enough that you'll notice it'll melt inside there still, even with the heat off. And it'll make this nice and thick and creamy sauce for on top of our shells. So once you've done this and you give it a good stir and everything's melted inside of the sauce, we are actually going to take this and set this off the heat and just let it sit. Now, I'm going to come over here and preheat our oven to 350. Now, we have our sauce, we have our noodles, we need to make our stuffing that's going to go in the middle. So, first, what I like to start with is make sure you have a wood spoon. You want to put your mozzarella cheese in. Take your salad shrimp. Take your lump crab. And give this a good mix. Next, we're going to take our onion and pepper mixture, get that in there. We're going to take our lemon, vinegar, and pepper, sprinkle that in, add our Old Bay seasoning, our mayonnaise, and then we add our milk. Now we're going to give this a good stir and mix this really well. And this is what you end up with. A nice, well mixed, make sure everything's incorporated in so that when you take a scoop and put it in a shell, you get a nice chunk of everything in each shell. So now we're on to the fun part where we are going to stuff the shells. So what we're going to do, and the easiest way to do this, is to take your shell, hold it in your hand kind of like a cup so that you're pushing a little bit of pressure on each side so that it opens up. You want to take a tablespoon, a large tablespoon, and get a nice big helping. Make sure you get a little bit of everything in here. And then you want to get it down inside the shell, just enough, just stuffed enough so that the shell doesn't quite close, but doesn't burst at the seams. And then we're going to do this for all of the shells. Now this will typically fill up to 11 by 7 glass pans. And what works out is I'm only a family of 3. It's me, my wife, and my son Max. And there's only 3 of us, so we don't eat all of these in one setting. So what's real nice, and I'll show you, is these store very well. They freeze and reheat very, very well. So it's also something if you wanted to make it, today, and then save it for over the weekend or for a family dinner, it'll reheat just as well. And I'll show you how to do that too. So now, as you can see, we have our perfectly stuffed seafood stuffed shells. Now we also have a little extra tray. This works perfect for lunches, quick lunches. Like I said, they reheat perfectly. I'll probably use these for a small dinner or something one day. But now that we are done with this, we're going to move our table back here. And the next step is to give our sauce from the stove a nice quick stir. It'll still be warm, which is perfect. We already have our oven over here preheated for 350 degrees. So we are going to take our sauce and you are going to drizzle this over each row of stuffed shell, making sure to get each shell perfectly covered. And what you're also going to want to do at this point is take your Old Bay seasoning and just give it a nice little sprinkle over top. You don't want to put too much, just enough to kind of cover each one of the shells. And then, voila, you are ready to pop these in the oven. So we are going to take these and put them in the oven at 350 for about 30 to 35 minutes. You want to see if the sauce will be bubbly. That's when you want to take them out of the oven. And now that they've been in the oven for about a half hour, we are going to check on our stuffed shells. Oh yeah, that's the juicy, bubbly, creamy stuffed shells you want to see. Alright, we're going to come over here and grab our oven mitt real quick. Since naturally you would think I would have brought it over there with me, but I didn't. Oh, I wish you could smell this. Now that we've pulled our shells out of the oven, we're going to move on real quick and I'm going to show you what to do with the leftover shells, the easiest way to freeze them, and just go over real quick how to reheat them. So now that we have our other batch in the oven, what do we do with these? So these are the leftover ones, and like I said, this recipe is very easy to reheat. So you're going to have these little ones here. What you want to do is the sauce when you poured it on was still warm. So you want to let this sit out, get to, about room temperature. What I typically will do is cover it in saran wrap and then a layer of foil, and then you just pop them in the freezer. All you got to do is let them thaw to room temperature and follow the same instructions. Throw them in the oven uncovered at 350 for 30 minutes, but you want to make sure that they're thawed all the way. If you go to check them and they're not quite thawed, you may have to add a little bit more time, but you may want to wait until they're fully thawed, because if you don't, then you're going to end up with a burnt top. The cheese sauce will burn and the middle is still going to stay frozen. So once again, I thank you for joining me today, and I'm going to put some pictures at the end here of how these stuffed shells turned out. If you like this video and want to see more like this, please subscribe to the channel. Also give this video a great big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and also if you tried this recipe or have recipes you'd like me to try or show you how to do, leave a comment down below. And once again, please hit subscribe, and you just keep being you while I show you the things that are me just being me.